for FOMO. What other stock could we talk about other than Nvidia as the stock drives the action the last few sessions, probably for the better part of this year, but really, Jenny, it's intensified, I would say, the last week. We saw a little bit of weakness into earnings, maybe some profit taking. It'd been hard to be, I guess, anything other than that when you start thinking about some of the selling, given the movement we've seen. Maybe some weak hands before earnings, but it was short-lived. The earnings came out. There was a little bit of weakness. I think low tick was like 645. So sorry to the person who filled there, but it's never looked back since, and it's just gotten stronger and stronger. Look, I know it's off like $7 from the high. That's 1% at this point. Who cares?
I know. I mean, today's move to the upside, for all the pessimism and all of the selling, we saw 4 down days actually into this report. Now we're pacing to close out the week up 6.5%. So it just goes to show the power of a good earnings call and a good earnings report at that. I mean, as far as like blowing past expectations, that was a no-brainer. You look at some of the individual revenue components. I think it speaks to the outsized strength of Nvidia. Data center revenues up 409% on a year-over-year basis. Gaming is actually a surprising one, up 56%. That was strong. And professional visualization is up 105% year-over-year. Their only declining revenue segment was automotive. That was down 4%. But I mean, this is a story in which there was so much concern about demand for GPUs, which are used, of course, to then train AI systems. Nvidia delivered on every expectation as far as demand. And actually, when you look at the supply chain, they mentioned being somewhat supply chain constrained. I only read their perhaps negatives as positives, because if you're seeing this strong of a report and you're still mentioning supply chain weakness, what does Nvidia look like at full capacity? I mean, maybe we'll never even know what that does look like, but they have been able to handle any supply chain snags so much more efficiently. I mean, not only surviving, but thriving in this environment versus their peers. The one perhaps area of weakness that I could maybe find is that we are expecting this deceleration in some of their overall data center revenue tied to China. But I also read that as a huge positive, because, hey, if you're looking at the China region, you're not seeing the pace of recovery, what you had initially anticipated as a company, that is a massive area of revenue that only stands then to grow. So all of these various things, I only see as positives going forward in terms of the technology and the software in which NVIDIA employs. Plus, the stock trades at, I believe it was just over 35 times its forward earnings. There's still the argument being said, this name has more room to run, which I think speaks to nothing but praise from analysts today that I've seen. I mean, price targets, when you look at those that have changed their price targets, Stifel 910, B of A 925, Benchmark 1000, Bernstein 1000, KeyBank over $1,100 a share. So analysts are moving up their price targets with velocity. I know there's different opinions about where the analysts fall in terms of importance of the move, but I can respect at least that these price targets are substantially above where they previously were into this report.
So I'll do my best to play kind of devil's advocate, because I think there's a lot of positives out there right now. I will preface it as to, I'm not sure how much the fundamentals really matter to this move. You can make the argument the fundamentals support it, but this is an animal spirit type of situation as much as anything to me. Stocks that are $2 trillion in valuation thereabouts don't move 15% at a clip. That just doesn't happen. This stock's moved so fast and so much. And we talked about sort of the comparables in terms of what that value actually is compared to other things like the GDP of Canada and, of course, the entire value of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. But I'm not even going to go there. The thing for me is when you start looking at this, there's this underlying assumption that this is going to continue into perpetuity. That's how you get those valuations. That's how you get forward earnings expectations. The other key piece to this story is that somehow this means that all semiconductors are going to do this. This could literally just be a unique NVIDIA story. But for companies to be spending $24 billion on NVIDIA products quarter after quarter, there has to be some sort of return on that investment. Look, I don't know how much it costs to run things like ChatGPT. I don't use it. I've never used it. I know I'm not alone, but I'm also not necessarily indicative of the entire population. There are people using these things, but if it costs you what, $20 a month, $50 a month, how do you get to 24 billion with those subscriptions? And there's so many of them. So to me, the best case scenario is AI changes everything for these companies. But what does that do? That means that they can remove workers. They don't need workers anymore, okay? Well, if there's no workers, who's making money? Only the owners of these businesses that have these AI technologies. I guess that they just keep buying AI chips, but the economy would crash then, right? There would be no workers.
Yeah, so basically you're saying is like right now we're still trading on the potential of AI. Like what is the dollar and cents?
I just don't know how the potential of AI is ultimately beneficial in the end. And so I look at it as, hey, this could still mean Nvidia sells chips into perpetuity. I'm not discounting what it means for Nvidia. I'm not sure I fully am on board that it's going to be game-changing technologies for the Microsofts and the companies that are actually buying the chips. And because if it is, all that means is they're going to be able to reduce staff, but then if people don't have jobs, they're not going to buy products. So in the end, it's this big full circle situation where it's like, how do you, if you eliminate all workers, which again, we're not saying that that's going to happen, but just to kind of riddle this and game theory it out, who are you selling to exactly?
I completely understand like where it's like the actual implementation of AI in our daily lives. What does that even look like? Is it even necessarily a good thing? I think that's important.
Or who is it a good thing for?
Right, because I don't think it's necessarily a good thing for like the average. I mean, like I have understanding the AI, and I think you make a good point. At some point, these large language models, like say Alphabet has Gemini now. It's rebranded to, or now you have ChatGPT, and you have all these various services. At some point, there can only be so many of those because like there's only really two major search engines out there right now for at least us as American citizens. But like, I think that what's more interesting is the fact that Nvidia powers like the intelligence behind it. I can understand why they're the leader of it, but I agree. I think it's
they're the hardware, right?
Right.
And so if there's a bunch of R&D dollars going into this, which objectively there is, it should benefit Nvidia, and it has benefited Nvidia. And what's different between maybe Nvidia and Tesla is this isn't all hype. Like they made $24 billion this quarter. Like they're making this money. It's just how long does it last, and does it last, and how long can they sustain the growth rates? I don't know, but we don't need to know. And all we need to know is that right now, Nvidia was just up $100 a share since yesterday's close. And if that kind of activity continues, this kind of trade could benefit. 1,000 just seems like on the doorstep. I know we're not even 800, but 1,000 seems like something that could happen, right? For a name like Nvidia, of course, anything could happen.